Hello everyone and welcome to the actual episode of the Backtracking thing about Jinjer. We will start with the band's second album, Cloud Factory. Again, watch the video for the very brief history I did yesterday to discover why I won't be doing the Inhale Don't Breathe EP. But before I talk about the album itself, I just want to say I got an announcement at the end of the video. What could it be? You probably already know it, but in case you don't, you'll find out soon. Also, a small side note, I should probably never wink again. But anyway, let's start with Jinjer's second album, Cloud Factory, released in 2014, presumably through the Leaders Records and presumably self-produced. I am glad that I made this my first one to cover for the episode, mostly because it has 8 tracks, which I often judge as album length at least, and just over 36 minutes long, it fills that time up quite well. I'd say that this album is a pretty good starting point for people if you want to get into the band, even though it wasn't my first album by them. Still, it establishes the sound from the opening track, Outlander. That sound being a delicate balance of pure blast beat fuck you metal and melodious melodies. To be honest, I wasn't expecting the amount of Tatiana's clean singing on this one. She incorporates a lot of screaming too, but it's her clean vocal work which really stands out for me on this album. She incorporates a lot of screaming too, obviously, but she's still got a good timbre to a clean voice, and usually that would sound confusing against the distorted guitar work of the absolutely bloody fucking brutal drumming. But it works here. The production ties that all together as well, as no one really overreaches anyone else. Not even the drummer at the time, Yevhen Mantulin, who easily puts in the best performance behind the kits. As opposed to everyone else who did it. It would be remiss to say that it's just him, obviously, as everyone else guides each other through. But this album isn't perfect. It is technically a debut, and it's their third overall release in a row following 2 back-to-back EPs or albums or whatever you personally want to quantify Inhale Don't Breathe as. I feel like the band could and should have used more time to work on things here though, and while I think the album sounds good, it does feel a bit too much at once at times. But all in all, despite those tiny niggles, that was niggles I said, the good does outweigh the bad on this album, and I would recommend Cloud Factory, especially if you're looking to get into this style of metal. My standout track overall would have to be the title track, it's just good shit. And although the album is short and does feel a wee bit rushed, the band does make the most out of their time here, and it just shows their hard-working spirit all the more. So, yeah, good. We then move on to the band's third album, King of Everything, released in 2016. I can only again presume that it was self-produced, but it was released through Napalm Records this time around, so yay. I also believe that this album is about when the band got their current lineup, so good stuff there as well. Anyhow, the album actually starts with the song titled Prologue, which immediately gives off 2 signals to me, both of which are signs that the band is actually trying new shit while on a much bigger label. The first vibe was that it almost added a conceptualized feeling to things, as the band says the album's title in the track quite a lot. Also, to add to that, the final song, Beggar's Dance, sort of does the same thing over a delightfully jazz-tinged tune. The other vibe was that the production would be way better, and I was right. I guess that the band not rushing to release anything before this album came out helped, owing to the fact that there's not any EPs that came out to bridge the gap between this and Cloud Factory. Of course, another reason that it felt better was being signed to a larger label, and the band was probably busy in the time between anyway, what with their constant touring to promote Cloud Factory. I think that added a slight change in the band's sound too, and I like that change. Their debut almost felt a bit too pigeonholed into the usual prog metal / genty tropes, but they managed to find a better balance on King of Everything. That shows in the lyrics as well. There's more politically charged songs about abuse of power, war, environmentalism, and death, and, because death in politics happens too, and it adds nicely to the loose concept that the album has, as well as showing that the time the band took really paid off, allowing them to mature and not just rush things. The album is structured well, and while it does repeat some of their debut, it's mostly a change for the better. My overall favourite track would have to be Word of Wisdom, not Words, Word, it is spelled that way. Jinjer took their time here, and I feel like it absolutely paid off. It's a more fun and more mature and better produced album than their debut by quite a lot of miles, so I would definitely recommend this one the most out of their back catalogue, but we're going to get to Macro soon. And speaking of which, finally, we reached the band's 4th album, Macro, released in 2019 again through Napalm and probably maybe self-produced again. This was my first album in full by the band. Now, for those who watched that Music of the Month review I did where I talked about this album, you may recall that I didn't look at this one with too much fondness. It wasn't because I wasn't familiar with their style, because I'd heard similar stuff in 2019, but I think that listening to their other albums before this made it stick out a bit more. However, there is still some issues that I'd like to talk about. So this album is the band's longest gap between releases, unless you count their micro EP, which came out a few months before Macro, and that's not unusual for bands to do, which I understand, but I don't know. There was something about it that didn't click for me at first. And even though I do still think it's good, I don't hold it in as high regard as, say, King of Everything. Which is a shame, as Macro is maybe the band's heaviest album. Kicking off with the absolutely blistering On the Top, it is a good tone setter for the album's heavy style, with more scream vocals, more gentle passages, longer songs, stretching 9 tracks over 40 minutes can't have been easy. But I just wanted more out of it. They could have included some of the songs from the Micro EP. Well, they sort of did that, as the closing song of Macro is the word perennial but spelled backwards, whereas on the Micro EP, perennial is the name of one of the songs. But the two songs actually sound different, so I'm not sure if that actually counts. I guess that somewhat ironically, I wanted the band to not waste my time as much here. It could have benefited from a rawer, more organic sound, but still, what works for the album really does work for the album. It just doesn't work for me, bizarrely. I know, maybe I'm weird. Well, I am weird. That's been established. All in all, though, my favourite track goes to the song Retrospection, and I feel like the band needed more time to work on this one, and hopefully they'll learn their lesson for next time, because they have a lot of potential here. They just really needed to use it the right way, and especially considering how much it was bubbling on King of Everything, it does feel a bit died down here, but I've got faith in them. I feel like they're going to knock my socks off for the next album, because they've got that potential in them. And that about does it for the episode. A slightly more negative sounding episode than I would have hoped, but as always, that is just my opinion. Really, you shouldn't take it as gospel because, no one watches my videos anyway. But before I sign off, obviously the announcements. PBW, it's going to come back, and, got some. I think I might have said this before in the last time I talked about PBW, but it is going to go through a few changes. There's only going to be 3 shows before a pay-per-view. There's only going to be 6 titles now and only like 6 matches per card. 6 matches Jean-Luc Picard, sorry. I couldn't... The pun was in my head, I had to say it. And it's going to be good stuff. I'm looking to stream tomorrow. I'm thinking about making Tuesdays my streaming days for the weekly shows. I'll try and get the pay-per-views done on weekends, probably. I don't know. It depends on what happens. But, yeah, that's really all that I had to say on PBW. But for the next time I'm backtracking, I'll see you for Flyleaf. And as always, thank you for watching. You are awesome. Bye bye.